Good evening, everyone. My name is Ralph Garcia with the City of Santa Clara. This is the community meeting for the Lafayette Street Bicycle Project and Pedestrian Safety Project. Okay.
Hi, everyone. This is Carol Chariot from the City of Santa Clara. I just want to let you know this meeting will be recorded. The Zoom application will notify you that this meeting is being recorded. Please press continue on the Zoom application to stay in the meeting. If you'd like to speak after the presentation, please raise your hand on the Zoom application or press *9 on your phone. Please only raise your hand while the item you're speaking to is being presented. Staff will enable speaking at the appropriate time. Okay, Ralph, please go ahead.
Video. Okay, there we go. So this is the Lafayette Street Bicycle Project. This meeting will be recorded, as Carol mentioned. If you cannot stay for the whole meeting, we do have a website available that you can log into and provide comments. You can also phone me. My phone number is there, 408-615-3026, or you can email your comments at rgarcia1@santaclaraca.gov. So tonight's meeting agenda, we'll just go through some introductions of the staff that have been working on the project. We'll discuss the bike lane project, the background and the purpose, the parking study we recently completed, some options for the project, and then we'll have a Zoom poll to see what some preferences are by the attendants. We're also going to show pedestrian improvement project, the next steps for both projects, and then any questions and feedback. So as I mentioned, we'll have the staff presentation and overview. Please hold all questions till the end of the presentation or comments. If there's a question about not being able to hear or not being able to see, please let us know right away. We'll see if we can address those problems. There's a raise hand feature where if you raise your hand, we can, if you want to speak, and we can unmute you. So as I mentioned, my name is Ralph Garcia, Senior Civil Engineer with the Department of Public Works in the Traffic Division. And with us tonight, we have Jonathan Yee, Transportation Manager. There's Jonathan, he is on. Carol Chariot, Principal Transportation Planner. And Chase.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I don't have a camera, but welcome.
We also have Chase Levessier, Associate Engineer. So he'll be joining us as well.
Hi everyone. I don't have a camera as well. I apologize.
So we'll move on to the project, give you some background and some history on it. So in June 2019, the bicycle plan update was completed. And in that bicycle plan, it listed several projects that were important to be completed for the city to complete the bicycle network. Lafayette Street was one of the 40 priority projects listed in that plan. You can find that plan on the city website if you just search bicycle plan 2018. In July 2021, City Council approved the Lafayette Street Protected Bikeway project, and we also received grant funding for the design. August of last year in 2021, there was a notification letter for the potential of some parking removal to implement the project. In January 2022, this year, we collected data for parking on the segments that would be affected by the project. We completed our study in March, and this month in May, we are starting a community meeting. So as I mentioned, the project is part of the priority project in the 2018 bike plan. This is a portion of Lafayette Street that connects from Reed up to Laurelwood. It's identified as a separated class 4 facility in the bike plan, but it does require the removal of parking from Memorex Drive to Parker Street, and that's kind of what we'll be discussing about the parking study. So if you look at the map, you can see in red Memorex Drive and Parker Street, and that one segment is where we're talking about removing parking. And then another thing to point out is basically from Reed all the way up north to the Bay Trail is where we'll have a completed bike network if we can get all the projects implemented. So for those that don't know, class 4 protected bikeway is what's shown on the screen. Basically, it's a bike lane with a buffer space and some sort of vertical element that separates the bicyclists and the vehicles. So this one is showing a flexible delineator. So it gives the driver some visual obstructions that lets them know that that bike lane is there and they shouldn't cross it. The flexible posts don't really damage cars, but it does provide that added visual benefit. So this is our study area for the parking analysis. So as I mentioned, from Memorex Drive to Parker Street or Court is where we're looking to eliminate parking on the west side of Lafayette Street. We also looked at surrounding on-street parking uses just to determine if parking was prohibited on those segments, if the nearby streets can accommodate that parking. So if you look on the screen, we also studied Memorex Drive, Shulman Avenue, Ronald Street, Avila Avenue, DeJulo Avenue, and Parker, as I mentioned. So the data collection I also mentioned was earlier this year in January. We looked at the peak times, Tuesday through Thursday. And the peak time for parking usually is either the midday morning, if it's a business area, or overnight if it's more residential. So this has both components. So we looked at both time slots for this. So these are some of the parking study results. So this is the weekday morning existing. And you can see that a lot of the areas near Lafayette Street where the businesses are, there's very high demand. So if you look, so the 0% mean that there's no parking available. The oranges are the more, parking is more available. And we don't have any greens, that's above 50%. So if you take this overall as a whole, there isn't a lot of parking, extra parking available in the weekday morning. So that lets you know that there's probably a lot of visitors that are using the parking in this area. So this slide shows what happens with the removal of the parking on street parking on Lafayette Street. And so what happens is all that parking gets redistributed to the neighborhood. And basically there's no available parking anywhere in on these segments. So then we also looked at weekday overnight. And as I mentioned, this is mostly where you would find residential, the peak for the residential parking, right? When everyone's home at night and from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So basically overnight, right? So we also see that most of the demand is near Lafayette Street, but when you look further away, there's more open space, open on-street space for parking. So near Shulman, Memorex, Ronald, there's a lot of capacity to handle parking. So if we look at what happens when we move Lafayette Street from the mix, that parking gets shifted to the nearest nearby streets, which then go to 0%, which means there's no available parking, but then we still have parking available further away from Lafayette Street. So with that, there's some project options we can do. So this one is showing the option 1, and the top diagram is the existing, and then the bottom is what happens if we remove parking and add the buffered bike lanes with the delineators on it. So this is what would happen. We would have to narrow the streets, remove the parking, and then we can fit in the bike lanes with the buffer. This is removal of parking on west side of Lafayette Street. So I should mention that the parking is only allowed on the west side of Lafayette Street in this segment. So what happens if we don't want to remove parking, but we still want to have some bike facilities? This is option 2. We leave the bike or the parking lane in for vehicles, but then we just have the bike lane next to that without any delineators or buffer space. And then on the east side of the street, we don't have any bike facilities at all. So it would have to be a shared or mixed use lane. So the third option, we keep the parking, but we just put the bike lane on the east side, and then on the west side, next to the parked vehicles, there wouldn't be any bike facilities. So it would just be a mixed flow lane with cars and bicyclists sharing the same lane. So now's the time for our poll question. So what is your preference? So as a reminder, option 1 is the removal of the parking and adding the buffered bike lanes with the flexible post or some sort of delineator. Option 2, do not remove the parking, but install the bike lane on the west side of the street only. Option 3 is to keep the parking and install the bike lane on the east side of the street. And then the fourth option is no project at all. So I think the poll is up on your screen. So we'll just give a few minutes for people to answer.
There should be 5 people now.
Yes, I think we see the responses. I think that is all our attendance. So this shows the breakdown of the poll. I think you can see that on the screen. So 20% want option 1, remove the parking, install the bike lanes with a buffered space. 20% want option 2, do not remove the parking and install the bike lane on the west side of the street only. 40% prefer option 3, do not remove the parking and install the bike lane on the east side of the street. So this would have the mixed flow lane by the parking lane. And then 20% option 4, no project. Thank you all for participating on the poll. I think we can go ahead and close the poll. Let's see, do you have to close it? Okay. So that was our bike project. So this is a pedestrian improvement project kind of going along in that same area for Lafayette Street and Parker Street. So we have identified as an improvement project for pedestrians for crossing of Lafayette Street. So right now there's an uncontrolled crossing. You can see in the aerial on that first image on the north side of the intersection. And then the other 2 images show the street level view of the intersection. So it doesn't have a lot of pedestrian features. There are signs to let motorists know that there is a crossing, but that is that is minimal for this type of crossing. And then also there's a what we call the zebra stripe type of crossing, and there's no ramp. So we've identified this as possible location for improvements. I don't know. And one of the improvement we've identified is a hawk beacon. So basically a hawk beacon is, if you see, this is on East River, and you also might find them on El Camino Real traveling in Santa Clara and close to the Sunnyvale border. Basically, I don't know if everyone knows, but when you see a red light, that tells drivers to stop, and then pedestrians will see a walk symbol, allowing them to cross the street. And then the flashing red will show during the pedestrian countdown phase. So it will let drivers know that they can proceed if their pedestrians have finished their crossing. And then the dark indications are usually off if there's no pedestrian phase activated. So this is something we've identified as an improvement for that area. So next steps, May to July of this year, we're going to summarize any community feedback we have received and provide options to City Council. And then for the pedestrian improvement project, we'll be applying for grants to see if we can have the design and construction funded for that improvement. So right now we're thinking late 2022 this year for the start of the design of Lafayette Street bike lane project. So once again, if you have questions or comments, please raise your hand and we'll be happy to answer them. Let's go through the questions first to see if we have any. Okay, we have someone asking a question. Let's see if they can speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So now that you've presented this information and taken the poll, who makes the final decision?
Great question. Maybe our traffic manager can provide some information on that. Jonathan?
Sure, I can provide details on the next steps. Once again, I'm Jonathan Yee. I'm the transportation manager in the Public Works Department, Traffic Division. So Beth, thank you for the question. So right now we're gathering all the input. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to prepare a staff report to the City Council. We're going to show the council the exact same information that was shown here tonight. So it'll be that staff collected data, completed a parking study, showing the results of that parking study, as well as showing the three options. And ultimately, it would be a council decision because ultimately, if parking is to be removed at all, it would require council action. And so those are the next steps as part of this project, is that we would present the same information that was shown to you all here tonight for council, hopefully to pick one of the three options as well. They will see the same data that you showed, or that was shown here, how we anticipate the neighborhood could potentially be impacted. You saw a lot of red there on that map. And so council would definitely have an informed decision with the data, as well as we would show them the results of the poll and what residents and neighbors within near Lafayette has also told us as well. So I guess I would encourage, if you have any comments regarding what was presented here tonight, we would just love to hear feedback as well, in addition to the poll, or if you'd like to provide any additional input, that'd be greatly appreciated for us.
Okay, I would love to.
Sure.
So within the block in question here, there is my house, and then there's the apartments. I'm questioning the study and like who was that? I know I see the data, but I'm questioning, did that really happen? Because ever since I knew that this was coming, I've been watching, and I didn't sit there and tabulate with my paper and pen. But in the block in question, there are a total of 9 parking spots. There used to be more, but a couple of months ago, there was a bunch of spaces that were painted red, and that probably took away 4 of those spots. In my location alone, so that's a total of 9 if every spot is full. And in my household alone, I have 6 adults, all driving, and one of us has a work vehicle. So of those 9 available spots, 7 of them are taken up just by my tenants and people who live on my property. So that's a huge concern. And then on one of the diagrams, I forgot which one, when it showed all the difference, yes, there'll be 0 parking on Lafayette, but here's where the parking will increase and you could still park. Well, I don't know of anybody anywhere who wants to walk a block and a half to get home, especially if you've gone to the grocery store. Currently, I'm having some my whole front yard redone, and will my gardeners and landscapers have to park 2 blocks away and carry their equipment in? So those are the concerns that I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was noting all of your comments. It's definitely feedback that we would present to the council as well in our staff report. Thank you, Beth, for the comment and questions. I think if there's anyone else, I think Chase or Carol, if you can allow the next speaker to unmute. See, I think I see a FGIAC. You're allowed.
You're allowed to speak.
Yes.
Hi, this is Frank. And I had a couple of questions for you. Have you guys taken into consideration the additional parking that's going to be used by the tenants that have now rented the available spaces that are on or right off of Lafayette Street and Avila on the left-hand side? Because those are individual spaces which now need additional parking for their own clients. And then have you also taken into consideration the additional spaces that are going to be needed by the data center people that will be moving in once the data center is done on Memorex? Because the entire area that you guys are looking at is the only residential area in that location. So any type of push from traffic from Lafayette Street not already impacts the neighbors and tenants that live there, but there are already concerns that have been put out to all of the city council about how the neighborhood is going to be impacted once the new data center is completely up and running, and these other businesses that are opening already in what is zoned a residential neighborhood. And my big concern is that you guys are forgetting, because I don't hear people saying residential neighborhood very often during this, that residential neighborhood was there before any of this commercial areas were built up. So are you guys really looking to protect the residents in that neighborhood? I'd like those questions answered, please.
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer that question. Thanks, Frank, for the question. So I would say the parking study that we completed, it did not take into account or forecast additional parking demands from like the uses that you mentioned, so like additional renters coming in, or the 1200 Memorex data center coming in. The parking study that we showed, at least tonight on this presentation, it was just a count of what was seen on the street in 30-minute increments on those specific dates earlier this year upon that collection. So, all we could say to the council is that that the observations were the existing uses, and that it doesn't, if there are any additional demands or land uses added in, the parking availability will actually be lower than what was shown. So I think, maybe to directly answer your question, this study right here that we showed, it was only of the existing demand. So, I think to just generally speaking, to account for any additional demand that you described, it would only be worse, is all I could say. And I think, Mr. Garcia mentioned, I guess the goal of tonight's presentation, it was just specifically to go over potential parking loss or parking removal, specifically to fit in the bike lanes as part of a project that the city received a grant for to implement a priority project in the bicycle plan. The project itself, one of the primary goals isn't specifically to protect the neighborhood, but I think that's just something that we have in mind when we do implement the project, is we don't want to impact the neighborhood, and that's the whole reason why we're doing, we did the study. I think if I recall, Frank, I think you were one of the residents that had emailed in, and I had responded directly to you about when staff had sent the initial notification letters, just to let the residents know that this project existed and this study was going to occur. So I think hopefully that answers your question there.
I don't know if I'm still on or not, but I hope all of these
Yes.
Comments that people are making will make it to the council while they have a chance to look at this project, because they already know the implications from the data center across the street on Lafayette, and now a new data center, and the additional rental spots that are in that neighborhood. So I think the number one priority should be protecting the residential neighborhood.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your comment and your question. We're taking notes. I think you had mentioned the desire to have the city council hear what was spoken, and where our goal is to definitely inform them of all the feedback we heard.
Thank you very much. Thank
Sure,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Okay, I think we have our next speaker being asked to unmute. Susie.
Yep. Hi. Yeah, this is Susie. Thank you. Yeah, I just really wanted to express my thoughts also on the impact to the neighborhood. I grew up in that area and I still own property there. And so my concerns are similar to what Frank raised, but really the impact to the neighborhood, because the neighborhood is primarily renters. And I'm sure with housing being so expensive, there's just more people that live in one unit. And so there are so many cars. And my fear also is that, there just won't be any parking for the people that are living in the area. I mean, I just was there on the weekend trying to park on Lafayette to visit my family member. And honestly, I had to park in the business next door, even though they don't want people parking there, because there was just no street parking. This was on a Sunday afternoon. There just wasn't anywhere to park. So anyway, I just wanted to express my concerns also, just to be heard in regards to the impact on the neighborhood. And my fear is that there just wouldn't be any parking for the people living there.
Thank you for your comments. Let's see here. As Beth, you have additional comment? I believe you spoke.
Okay, I just had two additional comments. What it's making the problem worse now than it has been in years and years is the building, the business next door to where I live has been vacant for many, many years. I don't know, maybe 10 or more. And during that time, visitors, ourselves, anybody can park in that lot. But now that all 3 of those suites are leased out, and we've been told, we had somebody that parked over there and got a nasty gram about, please don't park here. And my husband's a house husband, and I can speak from my experience from weekends and evenings, but he's here all day, every day. Bike riders, there's no shopping, there's no good restaurants. People aren't like, oh, let's ride down Lafayette and go for a nice bike ride. So the number of bike riders that physically use, and I can't speak of the whole thing you're proposing, but at least this section, are very minimal. And I know we're trying to make things safer for people, which is always a good goal, but many adult bike riders, not those with families, they don't even use the overpass. I called it the curly Q. They go underneath where the cars are anyway. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. I believe we have a couple of questions that were in the Q&A. There's a question about how many people are attending and what was done to market for marketing to the neighbors in this area, I assume about this meeting. So I believe we have about 5 attendants on this call. And then as far as letting the residents or people in the area know, we did send flyers out. Let's see, maybe Jonathan or someone can let them know how many were sent and what other methods we use to advertise a project. Oh, okay, here we go. There's 400 flyers were sent to residents, and we've also sent, looks like some social media posts to let residents know about the project. So as I mentioned, go to the next slide. We do have a website. So if anyone wasn't at this meeting and they want to provide feedback, they can do that. They can look on the project website, and then they can provide comments to me through email or my phone. It's there. I'll leave it up if anyone wants to write this down. And yeah, if you can just provide us feedback. So if you want to add any additional information, please send it to us. Oh,
Ralph, there's one more question in the Q&A.
Oh, so I guess there's a question about homeowners or business owners on the call. We didn't screen the attendance, so I don't think we have a mix, and I don't think we had that as a poll, but I think we just allow everyone to voice their opinion on the project. Everyone uses the area, so we'll take all feedback.
And maybe Ralph, if I can just maybe add a little bit more color onto the marketing question. So we did send, I think Ralph had mentioned, or Mr. Garcia had mentioned about 400, I think either 400 or 450 flyers. So those flyers were specifically to physical addresses on Lafayette, as well as on all the streets within the parking study area. So we sent the flyers to both physical addresses along those streets, as well as if, so the city does have a database. If the listed owner of a property is actually a different address, not in Santa Clara, we also sent flyers to the address listed of the owner. So that way, both the owner and tenant or occupant or business manager would see the flyer. So hopefully that provides a little bit more color on that. In addition to the marketing, I think Mr. Garcia mentioned social media. But what the staff did is we worked with the communications department within the city, and the communications department issued an article on the City Hall News, which would be on the website, as well as post on social media. So that would include Facebook, Nextdoor, and Twitter, I believe. And And I believe there were a few rounds of posts on the social media to try to get the word out, all in addition to the flyers.
So it looks like we do have a few more questions. So go ahead and allow the first person to speak. I think it's Beth.
One more thing I want to add that, and because I think it makes a difference when you're advertising, but I think primarily overall, this whole neighborhood, we've got a lot of, especially next door here to me, a lot of low income, non-English speaking residents who probably didn't even give that flyer. It came with a junk mail and they threw it out. Whether they went on to, whether they even have Nextdoor app, I would bet nobody is going to respond from the whole group next to me. And the landlord, who is, in my definition, from somebody who has rental properties, is what I would call a slumlord, because the roofs are falling off. They haven't been painted in, let's see, I'm I'm 61 years old. I would bet in my time, so I don't remember too much when I was a child, but let's say from my 20s, I don't think those things have ever even been painted. So that landlord could care less about things like parking. If you want that cheap rent, this is what you're going to get. So I don't know if that makes a difference on the population. And yes, 400 flyers sounds like, wow, you guys really did reach out. And you truly did. But again, the population it was targeted at aren't going to get involved.
Thank you, Beth. The next speaker is Susie.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, actually, my comments were going to be similar to Beth's. That's really what I was going to focus on as well. Is the area is really primarily renter occupied, and so, you know, I know they did the study and everything, but again, most of the time, most renters, particularly in an area such as this, where it's industrial, lots of low income, they probably did throw the flyers out. So I just wanted to add that comment as well, just for this recording, if the city council is going to be listening to this, because I think you do have to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Susie. And our last speaker.
Frank, I think you can speak now.
Oh, thank you. Hi, this question is for, I think, Mr. Lee or Mr. Yee. I'm sorry if I got your last name wrong. When we spoke last time, and we have emails going back and forth, I had asked you what additional marketing you guys were going to do, you know, based on both of the last callers. That area is heavily Hispanic. And so I'm wondering, I think I had asked, are you guys going to make sure that whatever is sent out is in at least 1 or 2 languages other than English? And I'm not sure if that got done or not. And I've contacted 4 people that I know over there, and just in the last 10 minutes, and none of them received any flyers. Not one of the 4. So I don't know who you sent 400 flyers to. You may have sent them to a lot of businesses, because you said you hit all of the area, but the business community over there is not going to care. It's only the residents that are going to care about it. So I think I have this documented in an email. That's why I had said it's very important that additional marketing be done to be able to get to the actual residents that live there, including if you had to go, you know, to house to be able to speak to people, I thought that that would be a really good thing to do in this area, because I'm not even sure how many people have internet in that area. So they wouldn't be able to check social media. And if the flyers weren't multi-language, I'm not sure how many people in that area, you know, read or speak English fluently. So can you answer those questions for me?
Sure, yeah, I can. Thanks again, Frank, for the question. So I do recall, you know, after the initial letter, you know, you were requesting additional efforts to outreach and marketing for the project, just to let people be aware of, you know, what's going on. I believe even in the email you had referenced another project the city has, which is the Prune Ridge Avenue project, where that project had essentially outreach meetings similar to this one and studies as well. You know, our first effort here was this meeting and the 400 flyers that you mentioned. I would say we did not market in a second language such as Spanish or another language. We'll definitely have to take a look to see if we can do additional marketing in Spanish to try to reach more people, and see if there's a way to gather input and connect them. So right now, I think on the flyer, there's a specific contact information and phone number. You know, we would definitely confirm if there's a second round that we would definitely connect them with the Spanish speaking staff person as well. So that way the conversation can flow and nothing would be lost in translation. But I would say, Frank, after our initial email, staff did do additional effort in terms of the scope for this project. So, you know, I think Mr. Garcia mentioned that the parking removal, it's about two blocks. And so the initial effort wasn't quite as large as Prune Ridge, because the Prune Ridge project, the consideration of parking removal for that project is actually along 2.2 miles. And so, you know, it was affecting, I don't know the exact quantity off the top of my head, but it was affecting you know, nearly 1,000 parking spaces. And so that's why the level of effort was just kind of scaled, just because of the number of quantity and number of residents along that long 2.2 mile stretch. But, you know, for this project, we did make increased our effort to try to use the social media and use the flyers, as well as have this meeting here tonight and listen to the additional input. So we can definitely see what we can do to reach more residents.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yee. It doesn't look like there's any more questions in our chat or no more hands raised. I want to thank everyone for attending the meeting, taking time out of your busy schedule and providing your comments. We really appreciate it. It just helps us do our job better. So I believe we can end the meeting. Is there anything else, Mr. Yee or Carol, that we want to add?
I just wanted to add thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today in the meeting and provide your questions and comments. It's very valuable for staff, and we definitely seeking as much feedback and input as possible so we can present or bring the project to the council as a future next step.
Thank you, everyone. And I believe we're going to end the meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.